So here's some internal parts. There's seats, and there's actually 4 pieces to the seat. There's a front and a back, and a seat and a back seat. To form these, after they're cut out and edge treated, I just take a appropriately shaped thing like a brush handle and roll it against my fat little hand. You can use a mouse pad behind you, that works too. But what that does is form the paper into the approximate shape you want. That's one of the keys of this paper modeling, is making the paper look about the way you want it, and then you add your glue. So now that's going to go and fit in there like so. And we're going to find out in a couple seconds here that this actually was, I think I have this backwards because of where the little seat belts are supposed to attach. You can see those little white pieces on the ends. Those are supposed to be on the outside, but oh well, we just won't tell anybody. This case, I add a little glue, and then I will just basically adhere these 2 seat pieces together and make sure they're straight and everything. And then I will reform them into my curved shape so that you can then put them on top of the seat, which you can see the gray piece and the brown piece. That's the shape you're going to need to find. But this glue is nice because it works very quick. It's tacky, but you can switch things around a little bit. So now there's the shape I'm going to want to put. I'm going to put that backing on top of that. That little white edge is where it's supposed to go. So now this is kind of dry. Again, form the backing, give it a little bit of a shape, and you can overshape it and it'll spring back. So don't worry about being a little overzealous. And you can see that it's almost exactly the right place, the right shape you want it to be. You're not going to get it perfect, but you're going to be close. And you tweak it a little bit, you play around with it, you get it as close as you can, and then we'll glue it on. Now, gluing this is a little tricky. Adding the glue is not a problem, but then putting that on so that it looks good and is the right shape and everything is not terribly simple. What I probably should have done is just start with like gluing one back piece first and then glued the rest of it. But I elected to put glue all the way around and try to attach the back seat portion all at once. And it worked, but there were moments where I rued my decision. But you go ahead and you attach this, and the glue again adheres pretty fast, and then you use your fingers and you sort of fold it and hold it in place, and you just play around with it until you get it to the right shape and you get it adhering. And you end up with your seat, and then you sort of tweak it. The white globs will disappear, either dry or we're going to put another piece on there. But now I sit here and play with this until I get it to the right shape. That looks pretty good. That looks actually really good. It looks every bit as good as a plastic model seat that you'd find. So now I'll put the little backing, or the little seat bottom on. And just a little bit of glue in there is fine. Doesn't have to be perfect because this thing will hide a multitude of sins, this little brown wooden piece, which again, I thought in my mind that would be the side that would be out that you would see, is the brown wooden part. But I don't think it's supposed to be that way, or maybe this part is, but I don't think the backing is supposed to be that way, and you'll see why in a second. Anyway, that goes in like so. Make sure it's dry. Now, I realized that, see that little white triangle? I decided to color it in because that's where the seat belts are supposed to go. And if I put a seat belt on either side, it'll be on the inside and you won't be able to wrap it around. So that's why I think I have those backwards. I think the dark brown piece is supposed to be on the inside and the wood is supposed to be wrapped around the outside. So look at what I've done here and then do the opposite. Now, adding the little seat belts, that's easy. I just, eyeballed where they should be. Put a little glue on the end and then go ahead and touch it, and then you give it a good squeeze with the tweezers, and that helps everything adhere. And you do the same to the other side, and then you just let it dry. There's the buckle side, and there it is, squeezed, and let it go. Now we start with some more parts. So this little piece down here, 3 pieces, that's some kind of little dial There's the housing, and there's an edge that goes around it. So those three pieces make up this little thing. So the first thing you got to do, that's how it'll attach right there. It'll look pretty nice, hopefully, when it's done. It goes in the side of the cockpit. Now, that little black piece has to be rolled. And that is a little tool with a slot in the top that's used for, I can't remember, the name escapes me, a certain kind of working with paper where people make little shapes. But you can make it curls with it. I bought it like at Michael's or something. It was a really cheap thing to buy. But this is a good, certain pieces of paper. It's nice. It doesn't work all the time. But you can then put your paper into the little slot. It can be tricky. Like here, I'm having all sorts of difficulty. But once you get it in, you then hold it and you roll. And as you roll, you're rolling into a little circle. So you're again making the paper go into this round shape. And then you pull it off, and then you have to tweak it with some tweezers to get it to the right size, because of course that's too small at this point. And these edges are just going to be butt joined. But because it's not a piece you're going to, as my mother used to say, chin yourself on, it doesn't have to be, made out of titanium. You just get it so that it stays in the shape, and you glue it down. You might not even need to glue those pieces together, really, those ends, because they're going to be glued onto that piece of paper that's going to house the little dial anyway, and that would probably hold them. In my case, it's going to go like that. So if you put some glue on the ends of that, you could just drop it right down. I bet it would be fine. I did try to end join these a little bit with glue, and it worked. It wasn't the most beautiful job, but it worked. Here I'm grabbing a little bit of glue and sticking it on the inside and trying to get it so that it's going to edge glue. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You do a lot of holding with your fingers very delicately and folding, but you finally end up with something that looks like this little cookie cutter. And you kind of tweak it, and then there it is. It's a nice round piece, and it'll fit right on there like so. Yeah, that's not bad. You can squeeze it a little bit, get some of the quirks out of it. You get something that looks pretty even, and it'll fit right on top. And it'll be a multitude of sins will be hidden, because when you put the dial on, that'll help. So now I'm dipping it into a little pile of glue, and then dropping it right on the housing, and having it stick to my tweezers. Then I put a little glue on the end and drop the dial on top, and then just make sure it gets straight. And that's just fine. There's no reason to go crazy. Now that piece goes right there. There's a little line. You can't see it too well, but there's a little line that shows you where it's supposed to go. So I'll just put a little bit of glue along there and drop that little guy right in to the side. And you just gotta, make sure it's straight. But the little dial faces upwards. And not sure what instrument it is. I should know, but I'm not sure. It's a little bit crooked, but you can have time to adjust it. As you can see, I play with a little bit here and get it better. There you go. That'll gussy up the inside nicely. I could also put a clear plastic piece on top to make a glass dial, which I might do later. I'm not sure. Now the next thing here is, remember that little throttle handle, and it's flat? Well, what I did was I went in with some red paint and painted it to clean it up. But then I took some more of this glue, and I just put a dollop on. You're just kind of putting it on. You have to be that careful. It'll sort of surface tension hold its shape, and it will dry. And you'll end up putting a couple of coats on there, and it will end up looking like three-dimensional. We'll paint it later. Now, putting these seat belts on, they're kind of fun to do, because you kind of want to play with them and make them look more, a natural fold. Imagine how they would look when someone was done sitting on there. And you can get rid of the excess glue, that's no problem. And you can squish the paper in, and the paper actually, forms kind of nicely and looks very natural. Other people are better at this than I, but still looks pretty good. And then you form the other one with the buckle, and you do the very same thing. Put a little glue under it, and plop it down there and let it dry. very easy to do, and really does make things nice. I think I got to add some seats in some buckles in the back though too, because these are on the lap. But I think there should be something that goes over the pilot's shoulders, and so I'll probably have to look at a real picture and just sort of add those out of paper or a masking tape or something, because they should look better than they are, or I think they should be added. Anyway, look at that. There you've got a neat little three-dimensional seat. Looks wonderful. It'll look great inside the cockpit. No worries there. Very pleased. I've got a couple more things to go. Oh, there I'm adding a little more blob of white glue just to give it a little more three-dimensional look, and then just let it dry. You can just do that and it dries quickly. But you can see it's starting to look like a little blob. And so it won't just be a flat piece of paper when we're all done. You can see that. It's even probably too much, but still, you want to be able to look in the cockpit and see something interesting going on. Now, this little guy fits on a former. It's actually where it's supposed to simulate ammunition, an ammunition holder. And it folds into a square, and to do that, you go from the back side and you emboss right along where you're going to want it to bend. And I use the back side. See, this is an X-Acto blade, but I'm using the back side, not the sharp side. I don't want to cut it. And I do 2 or 3 very gentle little rolls of this just to emboss it, so that you're gonna sort of make the paper hint that the paper is going to want to bend in that location. Then you do the same thing all the way around on all 4 little pieces, because that'll ultimately make a nice little, hopefully sharp square if you did everything right. So you start folding this, and when you fold it, you see that they fold, but it's not really sharp, and see how the piece kind of rolls back. This piece I think is really tight. It doesn't really want to go. So what do? So I learned from someone a long time ago, take a little water with a brush, or I used isopropanol, and just run it along the seam, the emboss. And now look at that piece, how it went right up. Now what you've got is a real sharp bend that looks really good. And you add some glue to the successive edges, and you glue it together. And you just sort of fold it up and squeeze it with your fingers a little bit. Make sure it's all square and flat. And there you go. Those little white pieces, those slots, those are going to be from where the machine gun belts go and hold the machine guns in place. Now, because it's an important piece, I put some glue on the inside on all of the seams, so that'll dry and it'll give it a little bit of structural integrity. At least that's my theory. We'll see if that really helps or not. But there's the bulkhead where that's going to go on, and I just test fitted it. And it's okay, except it's a little bit, I fold a little wrong. So you just take a sanding block and just take a little bit, a few passes off the top, and lo and behold, it now fits better. Bam. Now we just add a little glue to it and stick it on the former. You probably could wait too, but I think that when you put the former in there, it's going to be harder to put this on. So I'd rather just stick it in, have it as one piece, make sure it's straight, because again, that's where the guns are going to go. If it's not straight, the guns will be wonky. Clean up a little bit of glue, and there you have that piece mounted to the former. Looks fine. See, there's the picture on the plan. I want to show you that's how that is going, why that's important, why that's held on in place. Okay. So one more little thing to do. So this is this little pump, I think, for the fuel, if I recall. And I have to make a handle on the one side. I haven't done that yet. But again, I'm going to use this little tool here. Quilling, that's it. It's a quilling tool. That's what that, where you fold paper, roll paper around. And you can see with that quilling tool, I'm able to roll this and get it again into a pretty nice cylinder. Rolling small cylinders or any cylinders in paper is not easy, and to make it look good. I roll it between my fingers, and it's still not perfect, but you do the same thing you did with that other piece. You sort of dilly-dally with it with the tweezers, and you add some glue along the seam, and ultimately you end up holding it in place. And as long as it's about the right diameter, you're fine. The ends then are glued because you're going to put a little end cap on each. A little tube comes out of one end, and then the other end is going to be the handle for the pilot to pump, which again we have to make. But put this on one end, and then you glue and put the identical thing on the other side. Now you've got this nice little cylindrical tube. And on the little plans, it shows right where it's supposed to go, that little diagonal. So you put a little glue down, and use your skills of cheating and lying and hiding things. Put its seam against the fuselage so that you don't see that ugly seam that you have. It's not cheating, really. It's just makes sense. Pop that down there, and there you go. It looks just fine. And again, it's going to add a lot of interest to the interior. Now, that needs to have a little piece of wire that it would have attached, and there's actually a little dotted line on the plans or on the piece that show it. And what I do is I take a piece of, in this case, a little copper wire, and I bend it, try to make the bends kind of delicate and make them look realistic with a brush handle. And I cut it to shape, and there it is, and I've test fitted it. You just don't want it to go into the next place that other formers are going to be, and it's going to fit just like that. You're not even going to see it, really, because when the ammunition case goes up there, it's pretty much hidden. But, that's what model airplane people are like, or model ship builders, or tanks, whatever. So a little bit of our tacky glue on there, and drop that right where it's supposed to be. Boom. Not going to impinge on any formers. Looks nice. Again, I got to put the handle on the other side, but we'll make that later. Looks good. So there's all of our parts that we did. Now I'll take some red paint, and we'll just give this a little dab on that little throttle handle, and you'll see that it makes a good effect. Again, red, was it red? I don't know. Was it this big? Probably not. I think in scale, this is the size of an 8-ball or something, and it would have been much smaller. But overall, I think it's going to look okay, and I hope you can see that it definitely stands proud, and it's no longer a flat piece of paper. So that was the goal, and looks pretty nice. I'm very pleased with how it's going so far.